What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Retro Movie Podcast, the podcast where everything is connected. I'm your host, Jacob Thompson, and joining me is my co-host and friend, Alex Perkins. Perk, how you doing tonight?
I'm all right, but where's the lead?
I lost my train of thought for a second, but I got it. I'll tell you what, this movie was a hard one to grab something from.
Yeah, fair.
But I came up with person most likely to take a picture of me jumping into a river and get me in trouble at school and grounded.
I like that.
You have your photography, side hustle.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
You get people in trouble with it.
Yes. I am a paparazzo.
As it were. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. This is the show where every Perk and I review a movie connected to the last one we watched. Last time we watched Belle. Our connection was Aoi Yuki, who just had kind of background voices in Belle, but in this movie she played the little sister of Nishimiya. So a pretty big role there. But yeah, if you like our show, we post every Friday on YouTube podcast services. And this week we are reviewing A Silent Voice. Perk, why don't you intro for us?
All right. A Silent Voice is a 2016 joint directed by Naoko Yamada. It is about a kid who in elementary school gets a new classmate who's deaf, and he bullies her emotionally and physically, and she just wants to be friends. And then cut to down the road, he feels bad and wants to make amends, and they build a friendship in the future. A couple fun facts, which the one of them we missed out, but that's kind of cool actually. Shoko's English dub voice actress is actually deaf.
It's awesome.
Yeah, which is very cool. And the other one I saw was, which didn't make too much sense to me because I don't speak Japanese, but at one point when Shoko admits that she likes Ishida, she uses the word Suki, which is love or like, I guess, and sounds a lot like Tsuki with like a silent T, which means moon. So that's where he came up with the, she was talking about the moon.
Yeah, there's, from my years watching anime, it seems there's a lot of words that sound very similar. There can be some misinterpretation there. I'm sure that's also true in English, where it's not as blatantly aware of it. I was trying to come up with something like that for the intro for you, Perk, but I couldn't think of something clever or fast enough for that.
Fair enough.
I can go first on this one. So this is a hard one for me because there are things I really love about this movie. Like, I think like the cinematography is outstanding, and like just the composition of shots and the decisions they make to kind of show depression, and I think it's a gorgeously animated. And I think it is a very like strong, compelling story. My issue is that I could very easily tell this was adapted from a manga, and it felt like a series of chapters and not a typical like 3-act movie structure. And it kind of felt like just a condensed season of an anime, and I really think it would have been better as a season of anime as opposed to a film. I just think the pacing is just kind of, I won't say it's like slow or too fast. It's just kind of off, or kind of, I don't know. It just didn't feel like a movie to me. It felt like a condensed season of a show, which, isn't the worst thing in the world. But again, if I'm watching a movie, I expect kind of a typical movie structure. So, and I think like there are times when it's very apparent there was like stuff they cut from the manga, like what's the guy with the red hair? What's he doing?
Yeah.
Like, why is he in this?
I agree.
In this movie, I'm sure he had a larger role in the manga, and it made more sense.
We can get into it a little later when we discuss the characters. But
but it's like stuff like that where they're kind of just trying to condense the story down. I think if it would have been a season and like let breathe more, I think it would have worked even more. But that being said, I think, like I said, I think there are really strong things about this movie. I think the themes are really strong. I like the characters a lot. I like how it's shot, for lack of a better term, for animation. But yeah, I just think it would have worked better as a show.
The way I would sum up my feelings about this movie, pretty much I would say I think it might be a masterpiece, and I don't like it. It just like I could see all of the value. You're right, the animation's great. I think the score is great. It has a somewhat compelling story, but there are a few things that detract for me. At first, but not least, I would say your suggestion to maybe turn it into a series. I wouldn't watch it. I for sure wouldn't watch it because then the first quarter of the movie would probably be 2 or 3 episodes, and I was struggling to stay awake in the first.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, it it it's just how uh when we watched what's it called?
Stars on Earth, like Stars on Earth.
Yes,
Yeah.
like Stars on Earth. Thank you. Where the first half of the movie is just the kid being miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first more than half an hour of this movie is just Ishida bullying Nishimiya.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, I know. I understand we have to go here, but I was pretty much done with it right away, and then it just keeps being miserable, and it just kind of bored me. And then it picks up once they move to the future, but yeah, I don't know. Slow burn is the way that pretentious people say the movie's boring, and this one's definitely a slow burn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hear where you come from to some extent. I think maybe the first part in the past was a bit long. But I think it did a pretty good job of a kind of establishing all of the kind of main group of characters. Kind of, it all comes down to they're all trying to maintain their social standing, and they're using different tactics to do so, right? Like you have Ishida bullying to kind of remain kind of the alpha. Sorry for using that term, but you know what I mean. Among like the men, you have Ueno who's like joining in and trying to like make Ishida like her. You have Kawai who claims like, oh, I didn't actually do it. It's like, yeah, but you were like complicit essentially. And her defense is just like pushing blame off Sahara leaving. So I think it does a pretty good job like establishing all those characters. And
but then
yeah,
there's like half a dozen more characters.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we really just get his friend Nagatsuka and the red-haired guy, which I'm blanking on.
The red-haired
he essentially doesn't even need to be in the movie. And then I guess like the sister and stuff in the future. But yeah, I hear you though. I think that part could have been a little bit shorter, but I don't know. It's hard because like I feel like they need to show why Ishida is so depressed, or like show kind of how bad it was. Like the part where they're like ripping her hearing aids out and stuff is like fucking brutal, man. Like that is just like insane. But yeah, I hear where you're coming from in that. I guess I understand why they did it, and I understand why you think it kind of went on too long.
All right, what do you want to start in on?
I'll go on to praises for the movie. I just think the themes were really well done, and just kind of how they show depression. You have talked before about like how the BoJack episode "Soup Piece of Shit" is like a really good depiction of depression that we don't. Mm-hmm. It's hard to show, right? It's hard to show in a movie, much less an anime. We have a little bit more freedom with how to do it, and I really liked how they showed Ishida with him looking down, and we get the POV shots a lot. I think they use POV shots really, really well in this film, and just him kind of always looking down and looking away from people. And I really like the X mechanic. I thought that was really striking.
Was very clever.
Yeah. And just his feeling of like, in the movie exploring like him being like, do I deserve to live? You know, which is incredibly dark, but also like as someone who's dealt with depression and like self-worth issues, like I could relate to that to some extent. And I think the exploration of that topic was well done. I didn't expect Nishimiya for that in the last part of the movie for that to get so dark. But I think just overall, like how like depression was shown in this movie, I thought was very well done, and it's hard to do.
Yeah, I'll build on that because I think you're right. The themes are pretty strong. It kind of grapples with something that we don't see too often in in movies, because usually like the climactic type event is not in the first act.
Mm-hmm.
Like the bullying starts right away, and that's pretty much the event that the movie revolves around. And the kind of just the theme of kind of floating around with what is forgiveness? Are there things that are unforgivable?
Mm-hmm.
Can I be forgiven? What does that even mean? Do I deserve to be friends with Nishimiya? You know that it handles some interesting concepts that you don't see tackled too often.
Yeah, and I think especially, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but I feel like I gotta say it. And it hasn't been as much of a thing recently, but cancel culture is a thing that's been in the zeitgeist for a while now, and it's like, is redemption possible for people? Are certain things unforgivable? All that kind of stuff. I like how this movie kind of explores those topics, and I think like the scene of him, I think when they're at like the carnival, him like taking him on, be like, do I deserve, like, I'm having fun, do I deserve to have fun? Like all that stuff I got was just really, really, really powerful and strong. Another thing I really liked about this movie was I don't know what you call it, like the flash frames, where we'd get like quick little flashes of images that might indicate something that happened in the past or in the future, and maybe we haven't seen yet. Maybe we never will.
Sure.
Like for example, before we find out that Nishimiya wants to hurt herself, we get some flash frames of like a dead bird with like blood around it, and then her like laying with her head with the blood on the ground behind her head. And I'm like, first I'm like, what? Like, what is that? And I think after we find out later that she, was depressed, that was her trying to show, because I mean, she can't speak very well. Like that's her trying to show like, I want to, hurt myself. And like, they use those a lot in the film. I think that like was to great effect. Like I really liked, like I said, the cinematography of this movie, I think is outstanding. I
think the bird blood pool scene is not as literal as your read on it, but clearly it shows some dark thoughts are happening. I don't think her laying down in a puddle of blood is like
actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you're right on that. I think a lot of those flash frames seem to be almost just like someone's inner thought or someone's inner visualization. And rather than, having that spoken into the film, we get to see in these creative little snapshots. I agree. I thought that mechanic was cool.
Yeah. And it's kind of how they play with time in general, like jumping back and forth and showing little things from maybe right in the future or in the past. Like I just like all that stuff a lot. But yeah, I think where it starts to kind of, I'm not sure if I like as much as like, it felt like we were like, I mean, the beginning movie starts with like the past stuff and then we go to the future stuff. And I felt like we kind of kept moving into like new segment, as opposed to like longer arcs. If that makes sense. I to kind of echo what you're saying, it felt a lot of times like it was like, it's like the South Park guys did a class on writing, and they're like, you don't want to have to say and then, or I forget the dumb comparison. I've seen that video as well. I forget what the thing is, but yeah,
it does feel like after they make amends, it's like, and then this, and then that, and then this, and then they have a scene with Ueno, and that concludes, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's her send off, and it's like, actually, no, she's in the next part.
Yeah.
Okay, surely we're done. Actually, no, she's in that part, and then also the next part, and it's just
and all that felt that to me. That's like, oh, this is like a slice of life / like rom-com-y anime. Like this things would happen if I watch this as a show, but it's a movie. So I feel like more should have been done to kind of make it more flowing and like pushing itself forward, like as opposed to like you were saying of like we just kind of okay, that little chapter concluded, what's the next thing, So maybe I'm trying to say like the middle was too long and I'm just saying it in this sort of convoluted way, but yeah, I could just tell so easily this is like based on a chapter based manga.
Right. And then like on top of that too, with some of the little vignettes that we get in the second half of the movie, it's like the one where it's summer break and they're all hanging and they're the three of them. Nishimiya, is it Yuzuru?
Yes, Yuzuru.
Yeah, Nishimiya, Yuzuru, and Ishida hanging out, and he's being super clingy.
Yeah.
And then that kind of we just kind of move on.
Yeah, we just got to go into the mom's birthday and everything's fine. I was expecting some kind of confrontation of being like, hey, you're being too clingy. But they don't really have. Maybe they have it in the manga, but they didn't have time for it.
Maybe. But then also, why even include that bit then?
Yeah.
Because it adds in almost like a pivotal plot point of now he's clingy. What are we going to address? And then there isn't a resolution, and this movie's super long compared to some of the anime we've been watching. It's still just about 10 minutes over 2 hours, but
it feels long.
Yes, it feels long. Maybe if you trim down a few of those vignettes, and you could even elaborate on some of the smaller parts, like maybe we go a little more in depth on Mom's birthday.
Yeah,
that's a pretty.
Maybe we see his sister's face. So why the fuck did they go out of their way to hide the sister's face? It's such an odd choice.
Maybe there's something to it, and we're just not seeing it because
maybe
the sister's husband is on screen.
Yeah.
The sister's daughter is on screen.
Yeah, it was just so odd. Like we see like shots of her where it's cut off at like her waist of her, and then also like at the end final sequence, she's like holding Maria so that Maria's head covers her face. I'm just like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you should read the manga.
And maybe we should.
There's something in there.
Maybe we should, but like you said though, that wouldn't necessarily be an easy read. There's some really brutal stuff in this. Like,
yeah.
Besides like the two, suicide attempts, just like the brutality of just people hitting each other. Like, my God, after the Shoko incident and like Ueno's beating up on her, and then Shoko's mom's beating up on Ueno. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man! Like, this is like, I did not expect to see this kind of like shit in this movie. Like, yeah, there was a lot. I mean, I think it was all like made sense for the characters, but good Lord.
Yeah. If we want to, I agree. I think there's a lot of really painful scenes, and it does kind of just keep beating you down.
Yeah. I mean, we get that nice little kind of rom-com section in the middle, but
yes,
and it ends well. But yeah, there's kind of
to maybe take a peek a little closer at some of the characters.
Yeah.
We already mentioned orange hair guy who is literally irrelevant and has like 2 lines of dialogue, and it's just like, oh, he wants to be your friend, and it's like, okay,
yeah. And then he's not your friend, and he's like, I thought you were better. It's like, you don't even fucking know him. Like, get out of here.
But like the main core characters, I think are pretty good to an extent. I mean, Ishida goes through a lot, and we get to see a lot of his inner thoughts.
Yeah.
I think that works really well, and he's a very well fleshed out character. Ueno is definitely interesting.
She's the worst though, man. I just hate her. I hate her.
Well, and she keeps having these points where redemption is possible, and she doesn't get it until the very end of the, like, when they're going to the festival, and she says like stupid or something in sign language.
Yeah.
And that's her redemption after just being so mean for the entire movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Teenage girls are mean. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't necessarily find her unbelievable. I just hated her because you're supposed to hate her, I think.
Right. Kawaii.
Kawaii, yeah.
Yeah. When she started showing up again in the second half, I was just like, who is this? Who is this person?
It says you were snoozing during the first half of the movie, Perk. She was in there.
But as just like standing next to you, I know for the most part, right?
I mean, she had a good amount of lines.
Okay.
She gets called out by the teacher when they're doing the kind of the teacher calls out Ishida, he calls out Ueno, then Ueno calls out Kawaii, and that she was like, I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if you forgot who Sahara was, because Sahara was there for like 2 seconds.
Sahara was literally introduced and then given as a friend to Nishimiya, and then gone. They said that she was friends with Ueno, but I don't really remember. I mean, once again,
yeah, her and Ueno were in the same high school together.
But they were supposedly like close friends.
Yeah,
that just grew apart. The Sahara,
that's not. Yeah, the Sahara arc was didn't have time for it, and that's unfortunate because I think again, this was a show or in the manga.
Once again, Sahara has a pretty good character because it's like exploring cowardice and what is bravery and that kind of thing. But it's like, I don't think we needed to have an exploration of that in this movie. And, Nagatsuka.
I like him.
Yeah, I like him too. He's wholesome.
He's a little bit one note, but he has some good lines. And
He doesn't have much depth, but yeah, easy to root for.
Mhm.
Here's the Yuzuru I loved as a
Yeah,
character.
User was great. User was great.
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah.
She has a lot of depth, and we get a lot of story through her,
Mhm.
and she feels very real as a character, and as someone who wants to protect her big sister. I don't love Shoko as a character
Mm.
because I think her. I don't know. She's pretty. It's hard to describe, but basically, I think she's too peerless. She's essentially without flaw, other than we see, some self harm. But for most of the movie, she's just omnipotent good, and I don't know, is just not very intriguing as a character, other than the fact that she has this disability. But for the most of the first half of the movie, she kind of feels more like an object than a character.
Mm.
Um,
I hear
that,
you on that.
that does change, in the back half when they start exploring her a little bit more, and her thoughts and the self harm scene. And that's kind of a meditation on whatever. It's a meditation on how you don't necessarily see the sign, right?
Yeah.
Because Ishida is sad and always like down, and it's like, oh yeah, he's probably depressed, but you don't necessarily always see that.
Yeah.
And it's a good message to send, but because of that, we kind of just always get smiley teenager, Shoko, Nishimiya for the most part, with a few scenes in there of like her going to a doctor and getting bad news.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, once again, just her disability as the main focus there, and her teenage girling over how she likes Ishida, and
But that also
I
never
don't
really
know.
gets resolved either. Like she never actually is able to honestly confess to him. Yeah, no, I was thinking about her character.
She's just not overly compelling to me, despite the fact that she's the focal point.
Yeah, I was thinking about her character, and because I was thinking about in the past, like everyone's trying to protect their social standing, and I was like, but I think she was also, and her way is of just overly apologizing. And I was kind of waiting for someone to be like, you don't need to apologize for everything. And Ueno says it at the very end of the movie, but that's obviously then the movie ends, so we don't really get to explore that. I was hoping for some of that, like her getting some pushback, like, hey, like you don't need to apologize for who you are or anything like that. And
it's not really like you don't need to apologize. It's stop apologizing.
Yeah,
it's more of like it comes off more barbed than like someone saying, hey, you are who you are, you don't need to apologize for that.
Correct.
It's more like stop apologizing.
Right. From the character that everyone hates. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, no, I agree. I think there also is the theme of like, yeah, you might not see the signs that someone is dealing through depression. But yeah, I agree. It wasn't fully executed well. And again, I think if it was more time, or maybe if it was sequenced a little bit differently with her kind of moments, maybe if we're spread out a little bit differently. Yeah, I just think that not enough time was devoted to her as a person, and I agree with you that she kind of feels like more of like an object. They kind of just keeps doing the same thing for a lot of the movie.
Yeah, if you have a full series, you can really dig into her as a character.
Yeah,
really get to know about her motivations,
and maybe the more happens after, like, because I was looking at the chapter list, like more happens after this movie ends. Like there is more things, and so maybe like then is when she has more progression. So yeah, I'm a broken record. I keep going back to this. Should have been a show. I think it would have been a very, very good one. If it had this quality of animation, I don't know if it would have, just budget wise. If it had this quality of animation, was a show, it would have been S tier immediately. I think. But it is what it is. Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on? I mean, yeah, I think I said strong themes, great animation, but it is executed.
It has all the makings of greatness. There were just enough things that didn't really work for me, tied in with the bloated runtime. That it not for me. I can see why there are people who love this movie to death.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I'll reiterate because I think it's worth re-saying is like, this is one of the better depictions of depression I've seen in media. So I think it's worth watching just for that. Even though it doesn't execute everything super well.
Right.
All right. Well, that is our quick recommendations I wanted to give.
Sure.
If you want the wholesome version of this story, I would recommend the anime Comey Can't Communicate. I've talked about it before. Similar kind of story where a girl, high school girl, she's not deaf, but she can't speak because she's too anxious to talk. So she also uses a notebook to communicate like Shoko does. And instead of everyone bullying her, everyone is nice to her. And it's a very wholesome anime. So if you want to feel happier inside, I'd recommend watching Comey Can't Communicate. If you're interested in more of exploring kind of depression and stuff like that, I'd recommend the anime March Comes In Like a Lion. I always recommend it to people who like the Queen's Gambit because it's about a shogi player, which is Japanese chess. I think is he middle school or high school? He's maybe like late middle school, early high school. He's like a prodigy at shogi, but he's kind of dealing with other issues in his actual life, and very, very, very good. It's can be hard to watch as well at times, but I think it explores similar themes very effectively. So if you want more of that stuff, I'd recommend March Comes In Like a Lion.
I would just on similar topic, but some really good movies about and surrounding the deaf community.
Yeah.
The Sound of Metal, starring Riz Ahmed, is really fantastic. It's about a man who is a heavy metal drummer who loses his hearing and has to come to terms with that and has to find his way in a new community. And really, I think was a little underrated. It got some. Riz Ahmed got Best Actor nomination. He should have won. That's fine. One of my favorite movies the year it came out. Would highly recommend. And then another like pretty prevalent, but the Best Picture winning Coda is absolutely fantastic. It's a kind of an elaboration on if you look at the family life of Shoko and Yuzuru and what it's like to live in a family where some are deaf and some aren't. And the way that they have to cope with that, and how Yuzuru, who's the younger daughter, feels like she has to take care of her older sister.
Yep.
Similarly, everyone in the family in Coda is deaf except for the daughter, who's the main character, and she feels like she has an obligation to take care of them. And that movie also has great representation. It's got real children of deaf adults, which Coda. It's got real deaf people, and it's just a really nice story. I almost want to bite my tongue. It's a really nice coming of age story.
There we go. Yeah, those are great shout outs. I definitely want to see both of those for sure. All right. Well, before we get out of here, I got a bonus review perk. I am now as caught up as I can be on Psycho Pass. There's one movie that came out this year that's not streaming yet that I will watch as soon as it is. But I finished watching season 3 of Psycho Pass plus the end of season 3 movie. It's confusing, but season 3 is done. Still continue to love the show. I think it did the thing. I don't know if you've ever watched a show like this, Perk. You probably have, where you finish a season of a show, you start the next season, and the status quo has changed. All your favorite characters are gone, and they're like, hey, here are these new main characters. And you're like, get the fuck out of here. Bring back my favorite characters. Where are they, So season 3 does that, and I was like, initially like, man, like, where are my favorite characters? But they have these 2 new leads, and by the end of episode 1, I'm like, I'm in. I love these guys. I would go to the ends of the earth for these guys. Like, they're great. So really strong new cast in season 3, and we still got our old faithfuls back. Continues to explore interesting topics of immigration in this one. People trying to immigrate to this Japanese idealized society and the tensions that arise from that, as well as kind of not a ton, but kind of does AI deserve the rights to like vote and stuff like that? But it's kind of interesting. yeah, really solid season. Really enjoyed it. The end of it again sets up cool stuff for the next season. So I think they're going to do more, which is amazing. Yeah, if you like cyberpunky type stuff, I've talked about enough, so I won't say anymore. But you gotta watch Psycho Pass. It's just an incredible show. And I'm sad my journey with it is done for now, but I'm excited. It looks like there's going to be more to come. So yeah, watch Psycho Pass, people. Also, before I say we're watching next week, I'm cashing in my Malala for the year.
All right.
Perk, I was agonizing over this decision, but I have decided I'm choosing Ping Pong the animation.
All right.
It is a outstanding sports anime, probably my favorite sports anime ever, because it's 11 episodes and it's just one story, and then it ends, and it's perfect ending, and it's just incredible. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the animation itself, because you've seen it's very not normal.
Different.
It's very different. But it really adds the experience. And after one episode, I was like, yeah, I'm in.
All right.
So yeah, that's on Crunchyroll. I think is the only place to watch it, but
sounds good.
Hope you enjoy that. And we are done with our anime films. We did a string of 10. And now we're going to move on to a different part of the world, not too far away. We're going to Korea finally. And our first film is going to be Parasite. Perk has seen it. I have not, but I felt like we got to do it. This is probably the most famous Korean film of all time. Maybe Old Boy might pass it, possibly. Maybe Train to Busan. I don't know.
You could argue it's the most like landmark, because it was the first Korean film to be nominated for Best Picture. I don't know that for sure, but I feel like that's a really safe thing to say.
Yeah.
And it really energized a lot of the traditional American public who would never even consider watching a movie in a different language, because everyone said how good it was. It flipped the switch, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'll give it a try." I think I had watched subtitled films before then, but like that was not many. And since then, I mean, almost immediately after that, after Parasite came out, I watched like A Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the French movie. So I think it opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. It's a really important film in cinema history.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. I do have a connection. It's loose, but
slightly strenuous.
It's there, So A Silent Voice and Okja, one of Bong Joon-ho's other films, both use the classic Johann Sebastian Bach in the soundtrack / score. All right, he's in the IMDb. All right, he's in there. And then we'll just hop from Okja to Parasite, because Perk's already seen Okja, so we're not gonna do both of those. But yeah, we got there. And yeah, Parasite is on HBO Max right now. So if you want to watch it, it is on there for you. And until then, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.